Have you ever sat alone in a quiet room, staring at nothing in particular, asking a question you were almost afraid to say out loud? Why did this happen to me? Maybe it was a job you lost without warning. Maybe it was someone who walked out of your life and took a piece of your heart with them. Maybe it's a diagnosis, a delay, a door that slammed shut just when you thought it was finally about to open. If you've ever whispered that question into the dark, this meditation is for you. Before we get to the heart of it, I want to tell you about a man named Daniel. His story isn't a parable from long ago. It's the kind of story still being written today, in homes like yours, in hearts like yours. And by the end of it, I believe you'll understand something that changes the way you see every closed door in your own life. God does not make mistakes. Part 1. The Life Daniel. Built Daniel was 32 years old, and by every measure he knew how to take, his life was going exactly according to plan. He had spent 7 years climbing the ladder at a marketing firm downtown, the kind of job that came with a parking space with his name stenciled on it, and a calendar full of meetings that made him feel important. He was engaged to a woman named Rachel, and together they had already picked out a venue for the wedding, a small chapel with ivy growing up one wall that Rachel said looked like something out of a painting. Daniel went to church most Sundays, though if he was honest with himself, it had become more of a habit than a hunger. He believed in God the way a person believes the sun will rise, quietly, without much thought, assuming it would simply continue rising on schedule for the rest of his life. He had plans. A 5-year plan, actually, written in the back of a notebook he kept in his nightstand drawer. Promotion, marriage, a house with a yard big enough for a dog. He never imagined that within 18 months, every single line of that plan would be crossed out by a hand that was not his own. Part 2. When everything fell apart. It started on an ordinary Friday afternoon. Daniel was called into a conference room he didn't recognize being used for anything but client pitches, and a woman from human resources he'd spoken to maybe twice in 7 years slid a folder across the table and used the word restructuring. He remembers very little of what she said after that. He remembers the cardboard box he was given for his desk items. He remembers walking past coworkers who suddenly found something fascinating to look at on their screens rather than meet his eyes. He remembers sitting in his car in the parking garage for 40 minutes before he could make his hands work the steering wheel. He told himself it would be all right. He had savings. He had Rachel. He had, he thought, time. 2 weeks later, Rachel sat across from him at the small kitchen table in his apartment, and in a voice that trembled more than her words let on, she told him she couldn't go through with the wedding. Not now. Maybe not ever. I watched you lose your footing, she said, and instead of reaching for me, you started disappearing into yourself. I don't know how to be engaged to someone who isn't here anymore. Daniel didn't fight for her. He didn't have anything left in him to fight with. He simply nodded, and a week after that, he was packing the rest of his life into the same kind of cardboard box HR had handed him. He moved back into his childhood bedroom at his mother's house, in a town he'd worked so hard to leave behind. The ceiling fan in that room still wobbled the same way it had when he was 16. He lay beneath it most nights, unable to sleep, doing the math on a life that no longer added up. One night, somewhere past 2 in the morning, he finally said the prayer he'd been avoiding. It wasn't polished. It wasn't the kind of prayer you'd hear recited in church. He simply whispered into the dark, "God, did you forget about me? Or did I do something to deserve all of this?" And then he waited. He heard nothing. No voice, no sign, no sudden peace washing over him, just the wobble of the fan and the ache in his chest. He didn't know it yet, but that empty feeling silence was not abandonment. It was the quiet before something was about to be rebuilt. Part 3. The Room. God was preparing bills. Don't pause for heartbreak, and within a month, Daniel needed income, any income. A flyer at the grocery store led him to a temporary position at a community center on the edge of town, sorting donated food, organizing volunteer schedules, the kind of work he would never have considered a year earlier when his business cards still had a title on them he was proud of. He took the job because he had no other option, not because he believed it meant anything. It was there he met Walter, a volunteer in his 70s who showed up every single day, even though nobody required it of him. Walter had lost his wife 11 years prior, and had told Daniel, almost in passing one afternoon while stacking the year after her death had been the hardest of his life, and also, strangely, the year he'd found out who he really was. Grief has a way of clearing out everything that was never really yours to begin with, Walter said. It just leaves what's true. Daniel didn't understand it then. He filed it away the way you file away something that sounds wise but doesn't yet apply to you. What Daniel didn't expect was how naturally he took to the teenagers who came through the center after school, kids whose parents worked double shifts, kids who needed someone to ask about their day and actually wait for the answer. Within a few weeks, what had started as a way to pay rent had become something he found himself thinking about even when he wasn't there. He started a small after-school mentoring hour without anyone asking him to. He didn't realize he was discovering a calling. He just knew that for the first time in months, he went to bed at night without that hollow ache pressing on his chest. 8 months after he'd been let go, Daniel got a call from a former colleague. The company that had handed him a cardboard box had collapsed entirely. A financial scandal involving the executives at the very top, the kind that made the local news. Employees who had stayed were left fighting for unpaid wages, watching their retirement accounts evaporate, dragged into a mess Daniel had been spared from entirely 8 months before it ever surfaced. He sat with that news for a long time. The layoff that had felt like the worst thing to ever happen to him had, without his knowing it, walked him out the door before the building came down. Around that same time, he noticed Sarah, who coordinated volunteers at the center 2 days a week. She didn't fill a silence the way Rachel used to need him to. She sat in it with him. She asked him questions about Walter's stories and actually wanted to hear the answers. Slowly, without either of them naming it, something steady began growing between them. Nothing like the plan he'd written in the back of a notebook, and somehow more solid than anything that plan had ever promised him. He later heard, through a mutual friend, that the relationship Rachel had moved toward after their engagement ended had unraveled within the year, leaving her every bit as unmoored as he had once felt. He felt no satisfaction in that, only a quiet, sobering recognition that the door he thought had been slammed shut on him may have actually been a door God closed for him. Part 4. What Daniel didn't know. 3 years later, Daniel sat in the same community center, now running it full-time, with a mentoring program that had grown from one folding table to an entire wing of the building. He married Sarah in a small ceremony in that same building, with Walter standing beside him as a witness. None of it had been on the 5-year plan in his nightstand drawer. All of it had been better. I used to think God had made a mistake when he let me lose everything, Daniel said once, telling his own story to a room full of people who'd come through hard seasons of their own. I thought he'd looked away at exactly the wrong moment. Now I understand. He wasn't looking away. He was already building the next room of my life, brick by brick, while I was still grieving the one I thought I couldn't live without. He paused before he said the line that had become his anchor in every storm since. God does not make mistakes. He simply sees 100 steps ahead of the one you're standing on. Part 5. For you. Right now. Maybe your story doesn't look exactly like Daniel's. Maybe yours involves a job that vanished without warning, the way his did. Maybe it's a relationship that ended in a way you never asked for and never saw coming. Maybe it's a diagnosis that rearranged every plan you'd made for this year, or a friend who walked away when you needed them to stay, or a child you're worried about more than you let anyone know, or a prayer you've prayed so many times you've started to wonder if anyone is listening on the other end. Wherever you are tonight, I want you to hear this clearly. God does not make mistakes. Think about Joseph, sold into slavery by his own brothers, dragged into a foreign land in chains he never deserved. From where he stood, it must have looked like the cruelest kind of accident, a young man's future stolen by the people who should have protected him most. And yet that very betrayal became the road that carried him into a position to save an entire nation, including the brothers who had betrayed him. What looked like the end of his story was only the road to the middle of it. God does not make mistakes. There is a reason Scripture tells us that all things work together for the good of those who love him. Not some things, not the comfortable things, not the things that make sense to us in the moment, but all things, woven by a hand that sees the whole tapestry while we can only see the single thread we're standing on. The job that ended. the relationship that didn't survive, the years that felt wasted, even those, especially those. God does not make mistakes. There is a reason he says his plans for you are plans of hope, not harm, plans for a future even when the present moment feels like it has no future left in it at all. Maybe you're standing exactly where Daniel stood, in a quiet room, doing math on a life that no longer adds up. I want you to know that the silence you're sitting in right now is not God forgetting you. It is the quiet before something is being rebuilt. God does not make mistakes. There is a season for everything under heaven, a season for what is planted and a season for what is uprooted, a season for what is broken and a season for what is mended. You may be living in a season that feels like nothing but loss, but a season, by its very nature, is not forever. It is simply where you are right now, not where you will always be. God does not make mistakes. Even when you walk through the valley of the shadow, you are not walking through it alone, and you are not walking through it without purpose. The valley is not a sign that you've been left behind. It is simply the path between where you were and where you are going. God does not make mistakes. His ways are higher than our ways, and his thoughts are higher than our thoughts, which means the very things you cannot make sense of right now were never meant to be understood from where you're standing. They will make sense from where you're going. God does not make mistakes. So if you've lost a job and you're wondering if you'll ever find your footing again, you will, and you may find a footing better than the one you lost. If a relationship ended and you're wondering if you're still worth choosing, you are, and the right hands are still being prepared to hold yours. If your body is fighting something you didn't ask for, or your heart is carrying grief no one else can see, or you've been waiting on a promise so long you've nearly stopped believing it's coming, hold on a little longer. The God who walked Daniel out of a building 8 months before it collapsed is the same God walking ahead of you right now, closing doors you can't yet understand, so that he can open the one you were always meant for. A prayer for your heart. Let's pray together. Father, you see what I cannot see. You know what I'm carrying tonight. The loss, the confusion, the question I've been almost too afraid to ask you out loud. I confess that some days it feels like you've forgotten me, like the plan I built for my life has been torn apart for no reason at all. Tonight, I'm asking you to help me trade that fear for trust. Help me believe, even when I cannot yet see it, that you are not finished. Help me believe that every door that has closed in my life was closed by a hand that loves me, not a hand that has abandoned me. Where I have been holding on to anger toward people or circumstances I don't understand, soften my heart enough to let it go. Where I have been carrying grief alone, remind me that I am not actually alone, and that I never have been. Give me Daniel's courage to take the small, uncertain step in front of me, even when it looks nothing like the plan I once wrote for myself. Give me the patience to trust the season I'm in, even if it's a season of waiting, of rebuilding, of simply getting through one more night. And when I finally look back on this chapter of my life, let me see clearly what I can only believe right now by faith, that you were never absent, that you were never careless, and that you, the one who holds my whole story in your hands, do not make mistakes. In your name I pray. Amen. If something tonight stirred your heart, sit with it a while longer before you go back out into the noise of the world. Whatever door has closed in your life, trust the one who closed it. He is already building the next room.